say to that is boo hoo hoo. You white people are angry because you couldn't use your white privilege card to get invited to the Black Lives Matters All Black Memorial Day celebration. Wow.
Sadly, today, I cannot offer you another disturbing trend. Rather than a trend, it has become an ugly reality. And we'll get back to the Tucker Carlson encounter with Lisa Durden later in the video, but first we have a former staff member from the Evergreen State College reporting sanity on the Huffington Post. Yes, I said the Huffington Post. Those not already familiar with what has been happening recently at Evergreen can become enlightened by a few paragraphs from an article written by Michael Zimmerman, who had served for 5 years as provost and vice president for academic affairs at the Evergreen State College and is currently the founder and executive director of the Clergy Letter Project, an international organization of religious leaders and scientists created to demonstrate that religion and science need not be in conflict. The story that's being promoted everywhere is that one faculty member's resistance to Evergreen's 2017 incarnation of its day of absence is at the center of the turmoil. In 2017, instead of people of color voluntarily absenting themselves from campus for a day to demonstrate the importance they play in the community, as had been the case for many years, white individuals were encouraged to leave campus. In mid-March, Professor Bret Weinstein argued that there is a huge difference between a group or coalition deciding to voluntarily absent themselves from a shared space in order to highlight their vital and underappreciated roles, and a group or coalition encouraging another group to go away. The first is a forceful call to consciousness, which is, of course, crippling to the logic of oppression. The second is a show of force and an act of oppression in and of itself. The implication has been that Professor Weinstein's comments were so outlandishly racist that people caring about social justice had to rise up and call for his dismissal from his faculty position. This is the problem. When a very progressive professor from what is considered one of the most progressive colleges in the country dares to have an opinion that is not sanctioned by the thought police, he is branded a racist. The fact of the matter is, this new racism that is taking hold in America, the social justice warriors and brigades from the politically correct police attempt to disguise this bigotry by proclaiming that there is no such thing as reverse racism, which I wholeheartedly agree with. The term reverse racism is absurd. There is racism and it exists. In the United States past, it was not only a problem, but it was out in the open and sanctioned by the government. Although today we don't live in a utopian society of the future free from all evils that existed in the past, there are examples of inequality, but today it is the authoritarian left that is attempting to institutionalize this newfound racism. Rather than building on the progress of many generations of sacrifice and blood lost in the battle to end inequality for everyone, there are people who want to create a new inequality based on the notion of past evils committed by others no longer living, and that people who are considered the majority should now become new second-class citizens. As one of the many insidious weapons in their arsenal, the modern-day heresy charge of white supremacy is used to brand all people with the crime of wrongthink. Michael Zimmerman has produced an informative timeline that leads up to the events a few months ago at Evergreen, specifically the students and some faculty breaking college rules, disrupting events and harassment, with those in charge doing nothing to stop the abuse of students and faculty and staff at the college. And a link to the article is in the description below. I advise you to read the entire article. Speaking of the timing of the protest against Bret Weinstein, he writes, "The reality of what occurred is far more complex and, in fact, far more insidious than the caricature presented in most media reports. Regardless of what some would have us believe, the exclusion of white people from campus was not a mandate. No one was required to leave, but the pressure for white individuals to leave campus to demonstrate that they were good allies to people of color was very real, and many students, faculty, and staff alike were confused by the structure of the day. How could they not be confused? Consider parts of just 3 of many notes that were sent to all faculty and staff members prior to the day of absence by supporters of the event. I feel strongly about honoring the call for white identified people to absent themselves from campus. This change to day of absence, day of presence, this year where allies travel off campus and people of color stay on campus is beautiful. Think of the role reversal of this year's Day of Absence is brilliant in that it encourages Evergreen's white population to take accountability for their active participation in unlearning racial prejudice in a way that staying on campus wouldn't. So why was Professor Weinstein the epicenter of the student protest, and why did it occur when it did so long after he offered his critique of the Day of Absence? He continues, the answer to the first question revolves around the unique role that Professor Weinstein has played on campus during his time on the faculty. As much as it might like to think of itself as an open and tolerant environment, Evergreen isn't very accepting of voices that question the Evergreen orthodoxy. While this might be seen as a terribly ironic situation for a liberal arts college to find itself in, this has been the Evergreen reality for quite some time, and the result is that a large number of faculty members, perhaps the majority of them, simply absent themselves from most discussions. Professor Weinstein is not one of those who have opted for self-censorship. He has always been willing to ask questions, to point out what he sees as flaws in ideas, and to offer suggestions for improvement. Evergreen President George Bridges created a college equity council that was responsible for this change to the Day of Absence thrust upon the college community with no public input and no opportunity for discussion or debates of its merits. The council created a plan without any public input and scheduled a meeting in the middle of November to present it to the campus community, having announced that it had already received the blessing of President Bridges. The plan as presented was built on a statistical analysis of retention, achievement, and graduation data, and proposed to make significant changes to faculty hiring practices as well as to the structure of the curriculum. The meeting offered no opportunity for open discussion of the plan and was structured as an opportunity to celebrate the plan's creation. Building on the region's salish nature, the meeting concluded with attendees being asked to metaphorically climb into a canoe to embark on a journey to equity. The implication was that if people failed to board the canoe, they would be left behind. Indeed, the sentiment was expressed by some that if you were unwilling to get on board, perhaps Evergreen was not the place you should be working. Professor Weinstein responded in an email by raising some questions, but more importantly, calling for open discussion of the ideas, strategies, and directions outlined in the plan. He did so carefully and politely, never once criticizing any individual. Consider as an example the following from one of Professor Weinstein's early emails. Maybe it isn't mine to say because the canoe isn't from my culture, but this canoe metaphor felt like it was appropriated for the ironic purpose of cloaking an unstoppable train. You are either on board or you are not. You can attempt to derail this proposal or you can accept where the train is going. From what I have read, I do not believe this proposal will function to the net benefit of Evergreen students of color in the present or in the future. Whatever type of vehicle it is, I hope we can find a way to discuss this proposal on its merits before it moves further down the line. Notice Weinstein has couched his sentiments in the oppressive language of the regressive left so as not to offend the permanently offended. Maybe it isn't mine to say because the canoe isn't from my culture. But if semantics and the approved vocabulary were the only issues, then there wouldn't be a problem. The heinous thought crime was committed when Weinstein had the audacity to have and voice his own opinion, but more important was that he challenged those that now are assuming the role as his superior, hence the new racism. In response, he was branded a racist and an obstructionist. A faculty member who sat on the Equity Council explicitly called him a racist in 2 different faculty meetings. When Professor Weinstein asked for an opportunity to defend himself, he was told that a faculty meeting was not the appropriate venue for such a defense. When he asked what the appropriate venue was, he was told that no such venue existed because he was a racist. Neither the president nor the interim provost interceded to make it clear that leveling such charges against a fellow faculty member was unacceptable within the college community. When Professor Weinstein spoke privately with both of those administrators about these incidents, they both acknowledged the inappropriateness of the behavior, but each said that it was the responsibility of the other to do something about it. Neither administrator took any public action in response. This new racism that is being built upon the backs of decades of struggle from the historically marginalized and oppressed has branded all who question their racist identity politics as, well, racist. But even that tells only part of the story. As mentioned above, the equity strategic plan was built on a statistical foundation. When the validity of that foundation was called into question, including by a robust analysis by an Evergreen alum currently in graduate school, the same faculty member who publicly called Professor Weinstein a racist began attacking scientists, generally claiming that their reliance on data was dismissive of the concerns of students. President Bridges, upon being presented with the alum's statistical critique, promised a response, but none has been forthcoming. But there is more. Despite all of this, Professor Weinstein continued to call for open discussion of the strategic plan with no response other than personal attacks on him being ratcheted up. It became clear why Professor Weinstein's appeal for dialogue drew such enmity when the same faculty member who publicly called him a racist was reported to have said that the Equity Council didn't want such discussion because the plan might not survive such scrutiny intact. Well, big surprise, huh? A number of senior administrators voiced the same fear, with one going so far as to say that expecting a public review of the plan after it had been approved by the Equity Council, which had so many people of color on it, was an example of white supremacy. Oh, yes, of course. Anyone who is arrogant enough to have any thoughts that is in disagreement with people of color is the worst of the worst, a white supremacist. In an environment where you were either on the equity canoe or you were lost at sea, Professor Weinstein's voice was seen by many as a disruptive force that needed to be silenced, which explains why he became the center of attention once the protests began. Further in the article, he continues, it's also worth exploring the climate in which the Evergreen students' protesters were immersed, a climate that encouraged their behavior. A series of anecdotes will make my point. Let's begin with the faculty member who publicly called Professor Weinstein a racist. On 14 November, 2 days prior to the meeting at which the Equity Council's strategic plan was released, she made the following post on Facebook. Seriously, just be quiet. Only appointed approved whites can speak, and only when spoken to. When that post, a post by a member of the Equity Council, was brought to the attention of President Bridges, he opted to do nothing publicly. Forget for a moment, if you can, that if a white faculty member had posted this about a non-white person, it would be considered racist. And it should be. Remember that Bret Weinstein, as an honorable progressive, used language of inclusivity and to some the sickening jargon of the politically correct. Yet he was attacked as a racist and white supremacist. When you seek to segregate, to diminish the voices of anyone based on their skin color, you are a racist. When you set up a system that people of a certain skin color have more rights than others, then you are attempting to create institutional racism. And this is exactly what the social justice crowd at Evergreen are attempting to do. The Evergreen campus has become a place where identity politics takes precedence over every other aspect of social intercourse. It has become a place where it is acceptable for colleagues to levy personal attacks on colleagues in response to differences of opinion and even in response to calls for dialogue. It has become a place where it is acceptable to shout down those with whom you disagree. And it has become a place where the administration watches from the sidelines, apparently fearful of antagonizing anyone. But that is not what leadership is about. Leadership means treating all members of a community with respect and demanding that others do the same. It also means publicly holding community members responsible for their behavior. Finally, it means having and upholding a set of principles, even when doing so might be uncomfortable. Evergreen is not alone in the constellation of institutions of higher education facing these problems. It is, however, a place that has allowed extremists to dominate and discussion to die. Others will do well to learn from the mistakes made on this campus. Now let us turn our attention back to the discussion with Tucker Carlson. To some, he appears as a smug jerk, but one can't help to notice that his show has captured many moments showing the authoritarian left for what they are. New Jersey professor fired after heated Tucker Carlson Tonight appearance. Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey has fired an adjunct professor after she defended a blacks-only event during a heated interview on Fox News. Tucker Carlson tonight. Lisa Durden was suspended with pay 2 days after her June 6th appearance, but was fired following a public meeting with school officials last week. The college's president announced the decision Friday. The college was immediately inundated with feedback from students, faculty, and prospective students and their families expressing frustration, concern, and even fear that the views expressed by a college employee with influence over students would negatively impact their experience on the campus. College President Anthony Munroe said in a statement, "The college affirms its right to select employees who represent the institution appropriately and are aligned with our mission." His statement read in part, "The character of this institution mandates that we embrace diversity, inclusion, and unity. Racism cannot be fought with more racism." In her Fox News interview, Miss Durden defended a Black Lives Matter group's decision to host a blacks-only Memorial Day celebration in New York City. "On its face, I don't worry too much about people wanting to gather with whoever they want to be around. It's not my business. And if Lisa Durden was able to communicate this sentiment, I'd be fine. But it's this new racist face of identity politics that is dangerous." Tucker Carlson is the sane person in the room.
A Black Lives Matter group in New York City threw a Memorial Day party and barred anyone who was not black from attending. This is what they said: "Being intentional about being around black people is an act of resistance. This is an exclusively black space, so if you do not identify as black and want to come because you love black people, please respect the space and do not come."
And this is how Lisa Durden responds to this.
Lisa Durden is a political commentator and Black Lives Matter supporter. She joins us tonight. Lisa, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Good to see you again. You're doing well.
Thank you. I was confused by this because I thought the whole point of Black Lives Matter, one of the points, would be to speak out against singling people out on the basis of their race and punishing them for that. Because you can't control what your race is, and yet they seem to be doing that. Explain that to me.
What I say to that is boo-hoo-hoo. You white people are angry because you couldn't use your white privilege card to get invited to the Black Lives Matter all-black Memorial Day celebration. Wow. Let me contextualize that for you.
This has become a disturbing trend, mocking people based on their skin color. The new identity politics of racism rears its ugly head.
I just have a really simple question for you. If you don't like people excluding others on the basis of their race, and as a society we agree that that's bad. I agree it's bad, you agree it's bad. Then why are you doing it? And why are you defending it now?
White folks crack me up all of a sudden when we want to have one day for black folks to focus on ourselves, but you've been having White Day forever. You don't say the words anymore because you know it's politically incorrect, but you've had an all-white Oscars, all these movies with all-white actors, movie after movie after movie.
Why are they perpetuating it? Well, Tucker, that was a great question. People are doing this because they are encouraged by misguided white people who believe that we should replace what they think of as institutionalized racism and oppression of marginalized people with a new system of institutionalized racism where these horrible white people are now the oppressed. You're asking the right question. Remember this one?
Listen to me. You don't get it. I'm a white woman. I don't get it. I am pleased and honored to be here today to have the conversation. I am so excited that we're here. And I am listening because that's my job. My job is to listen to the issues. My job is to listen and be a voice. And my job is to shut other white people down when they want to interrupt.
Although you may not remember this.
What's good, y'all? It's called I've been very, very, very frustrated with Europeans, with people that look like me and who share an ancestral lineage with me. My primary frustration is that we've been so severely miseducated, we don't know how to think. And we've been stripped of our ability to use logic and reason. Also, we sit on a pedestal of slavery and colonization, and we sit so high, even those of us who are busting our ass all day, every day, working nonstop, we sit so high on the pedestal of slavery that we can't even see the world for what it truly is. This isn't our land. It never has been. It never will be. And until we return it, any sort of solidarity that we feel with black and indigenous people is a fucking joke. Unless you're willing to give back what you never earned, you are a opportunist and a liar. And if you are not even willing to admit that this isn't ours in the first place, you're a fool. Oh, wait, I'm in the middle of this? Oh, maybe I have some sort of responsibility here. Maybe I have some sort of responsibility. Oh, literally every article of clothing I have, literally every piece of food I eat is stolen? damn. And the people who are mining these raw materials, who are sowing these goods, who are harvesting these foods, they're not even able to eat these foods? They're not even able to wear clothes or have shoes?
Yes, just imagine all the people running around naked who have to make all your food and clothes. Not a big problem, since they aren't even allowed to eat food. They will soon perish. What I imagine is that there are people I have worked with that make things like clothes and food, and get this, we don't run around naked and starve to death.
Let me just ask you a quick question.
Go right ahead.
Do you think it's racist to exclude people on the basis of their skin color?
So we do accept them this particular day. They said, stay your asses out. We want to celebrate today. We don't want anybody going against us today.
And you can't celebrate if someone who doesn't look like you is around?
Yes, you can, but you can
You're
also
demented,
say, I don't want
actually.
to do it. It's a personal
choice. You're sick, and what you're saying is disgusting, and if you were a Nazi, I would say the same thing to you.
Luckily, I'm not a Nazi.
Because what you're saying is indistinguishable from what they are saying, which is, I don't care your opinions, I don't care your views, your life experience, your intentions. All I care about is the way you look, something that you can't control. And on that basis alone, I'm judging you, and I'm hostile to you. That's the case you're making, and it's divisive and wrong. And it's amazing that you even have to say that out loud, but I can't believe you're making the case you're making.
Unfortunately, when you have a racist society like America, you force individuals to come together collectively to make sure that they have a voice. And that's unfortunate that the racism has caused people.
Yes, Tucker, unfortunately, this is what identity politics looks like. Lisa Durden makes a number of intellectually lazy analogies to bolster her claim that Black Lives Matter can discriminate against a race of people. One of them is when you invite someone to your wedding, you might exclude children. But since Tucker is not a 5-year-old, he is able to see past this. He rightly responds by saying that children are not an ethnic group. Here is more of her poorly thought out examples.
And presumably they're basically the same as black adults, but you don't agree with that.
We have gay pride parades, we have Puerto Rican Day parades, we have all kinds of parades and days that honor individuals. We have Mother's Day, we have Father's Day.
Fathers are allowed to
participate
just
pick
in
your
that.
mama out,
I'm not sure you're even
out.
capable of having this conversation, so I'm going to end it now.
With such a toxic and distorted attitude about other people, it is easy to see why the college fired her.
As the new president, I think it is important for me to make clear and reaffirm the college's commitment as a public institution to maintaining a welcoming environment to all students from a variety of races, lifestyles, abilities, socioeconomic backgrounds, faiths, and cultures. As Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said, the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education. The character of this institution mandates that we embrace diversity, inclusion, and unity. Racism cannot be fought with more racism.
It is hopeful to note that even though Evergreen not only did nothing to put an end to the insanity on their campus, they appear to have encouraged it, while Essex County College will not stand for this new viral strain of cultural wars. The last video that I put on my channel was an interview and discussion with Keri about the cult of SJW and identity politics. I'll put the link to it in the description. I recommend that you watch it. You will hear two people who are on the left politically and culturally talking about our shared concern for the left abandoning its core principles, but instead embracing a toxic culture that will divide us as a people. They are the new religion. They are the ones not content with centuries of injustice and equality finally coming to an end. In the West, that is. Rather, they want to go back to the days when things were ugly and not equal and create a new system of inequity that favors people based on how they were born or what they claim to represent. Think about it. Thanks for watching this video, and to all the new subscribers, welcome aboard. Please come over and say hello on the social media channels in the links below. Goodbye.